Interest, thank you. And those are due April 15th, I believe. It's tax day, which is probably maybe the 17th this year. Oh, it is November? Okay, great. Roberta, thank you. And it's done electronically for you, those of you who have not done it before. So either if you haven't gotten an email yet about it, you should soon, or check in with Roberta. You register them, right? Yeah, so you should be getting notice. You'll get an email from the state, so check your spam folder. And it's called the SEI, Statement of Economic Interest. It's a little questionnaire you fill out electronically about where you get your income, mostly.
That'll come to our city email. It hasn't come yet, has it?
No.
Okay.
Usually comes in March, I think.
Okay.
But like the new counselors should have a token ID. You need to go in and create your account.
How do we get the token ID?
It should come to your city email.
Okay, hasn't come to mine yet, so,
Are you sure?
no.
Your junk folder, your spam folder?
I hardly ever check that one. You know, the city email comes up with preferred emails and then all the other 5 jillion ones. I don't go through the other 5 jillion ones,
Oh, because I've registered you.
so I should go home and check my 5 jillion ones?
I'm sorry. And if it's not there,
What will it come under? What will it be called, you know?
well, it's from the Oregon, OGEC, Oregon Government Ethics Commission.
You must have all just got an email there, right?
We're live.
Check for OGEC, SEI form, SEI information?
SEI.
Okay. SEI. Okay, so now we're warned. Check your emails. Are you gonna talk about gifts?
I was gonna spare you.
Well, that's a big one, especially for newer counselors.
Okay. Well, I just unplugged my PowerPoint, but we have it in front of us. I will actually say, I will argue with you, Mayor, that gifts is actually not a big issue for city councilors because the gift rule is on, I guess it's slide 36. You or a relative cannot ask for or receive gifts over $50 if, and it's that number 4 is the big one, if the source has an interest in your official actions. And you, as a city councilor, your official actions are votes. So it really only comes up if someone is in front of you, maybe on a land use appeal. Maybe you have something on the agenda where you're buying a piece of property and you're choosing between 2 different pieces of property. One property owner says, hey, here's a diamond ring, vote for me. If someone has an interest in your vote, which means for a city councilor, they're coming before you in a meeting, then you have to worry about it. I actually think you're saved a little bit because the scope of your authority is actually fairly narrow and is tailored towards more policy issues. You're goal setting, you're making policy, you're supervising your employee. The gift rule is more of a problem perhaps for Michelle because her authority is actually quite broad. She operates the city day to day, she makes a lot of decisions every day. And there could be a lot of people who are interested in those decisions.
So this is very specific related to a decision, not someone in the community. We're out for a coffee and they say, hey, can I buy your coffee? No. There's not any specific decision. But I'm the mayor, or you're the counselor. Congratulations, Norma, you're the counselor. Can I buy you a cup of coffee? No.
Unless is over a period of time and it exceeds $50.
If it becomes an ongoing thing where they're always buying it, and currying your favor maybe.
Well,
Usually
but
it has
again,
to do
number 4 is required.
Has
Even
to
if,
do with-
so they have to have an interest in your decisions. So again, I think for city councilors, this is actually not a huge risk. I mean, I think I will ask you. I think it's, I don't know, my preference would be to not accept gifts just as a matter of public policy and perception. I don't think it's a legal obligation. I think it's good governance.
Okay.
So maybe a specific example along the lines of what you're talking about is that we had an individual who moved into the community and then he was interested in starting to become involved, maybe getting himself on a board or something like that. So he first wanted to go out and have coffee, and he asked if I would go have coffee with him. And I did, but I wouldn't allow him to pay for my coffee, because at that point there, he was already expressing an interest in getting on to a board, and that is a decision that is made in the council. So I was a little leery on that one, so.
Yeah, I think that's a good call, but again, it would be a lot of coffee to get to $50.
$50 a coffee.
But
Not these days.
I could do that in one sitting.
that's right, fancy coffee. But I also think you're setting a good example though to someone who may be coming up and wanting to be a member of this community and a member of the city. Like, oh, we're setting the tone here by just not doing that.
That what you want to cover tonight?
The only thing left is conflicts of interest,
Okay.
and we can certainly do that.
We probably should.
All right, let's do
We
it.
may not have you back for a year in this segment,
That's
so.
right. So this one is easy too. And this starts on slide 40. For conflicts of interest, we are worried about an actual conflict versus a potential conflict. And an actual conflict will happen, something will happen, and a potential conflict is something could happen. So, what is the actual rule? It said an actual conflict is an action, decision, or recommendation by a city councilor that will result in financial benefit or detriment to you or a relative or a business with which you are associated. Will happen. And I guess that is another trend I'm seeing from the Government Ethics Commission is that they are actually really strictly interpreting the word will. It's got to be a certainty. So if you're taking a vote that will benefit your own pocket, that will benefit your son's pocket, absolutely will, then that's a problem. But if there's any uncertainty, then it's a potential conflict. A potential conflict is an action, decision, or recommendation by a city councilor that could result. We don't know. It's yes or no. Maybe even it's likely no. But if it could, then that's a potential conflict. So let's think about two different decisions that are in front of the city council. Say city staff has recommended that we buy a new piece of property because we need a new city hall. This one's getting too small. It's old and shabby. We need a new one. So we need a new piece of property in town, preferably something sizable, maybe in the commercial area. And you just happen to own a piece of property in town that's vacant. Who knows whether the city would want to be there. And so the first question before the city council is a recommendation from staff. We should look for a new piece of property. We recommend that we spend some time and some money looking for a new city hall. Well, you've got one of the very few pieces of property in town that could house a new city hall. But you don't know if that's actually gonna happen or not. We're just talking right now. So that's a potential conflict of interest. Now, later on, we've done the legwork, we figured out that there are 2 pieces of property in town that would suit a new city hall. One of them is yours, and one of them is not. And now you've got a decision from staff, which property do we buy? Well, we're either gonna buy my property, or we're gonna buy someone else's property. So we're either gonna make a decision that benefits me, or we're gonna make a decision that hurts me. I'm not gonna make that money. That will be a financial benefit or detriment to me. I mean, it's a certainty. We're either saying mine or his. The decision's either gonna be good or bad financially for me. So that will be a conflict. That's an actual conflict. And so what's the difference? A potential conflict of interest on the first decision, I would announce the nature of the conflict. I would say, I own property in town. You guys know I own property in town. It might work for the city hall, but we don't know. And so you announce that at the meeting, and then you go on and you deliberate, you participate. All you have to do is announce the nature of the conflict. And then you can continue. For that second decision, where we're actually choosing between my property and someone else's, that's an actual conflict. So again, I have to announce the nature of the conflict. I have to say, hey, property 1 is mine. I own it. I'm gonna make some money if you buy it, or I'm gonna not make money if you don't. So that's the conflict, and I am not gonna participate. Now, I'm not gonna deliberate, I'm not gonna talk, and I'm not gonna vote. Some people even go so far as to step down from the dais. That's not required. Sometimes, depending on the issue, that's good symbology. It's not a legal requirement. The other thing I see messed up is you have to declare the nature of the conflict. So even when there's an actual conflict, and so if I say, well, I'm not gonna vote, I'm abstaining. Well, you didn't say why. You have to say why. And it can't be, well, you know, I might make some money here. Well, is that really the nature of the conflict? Well, the nature of the conflict is I own one of those pieces of property, and so you have to say that. Don't be cute about it. And again, if there's a complaint, you want a good record, because that's what she's going to ask for if she gets a complaint. Is okay. Let me see the minutes. Let me see the video. Let me see where they announced the conflict. And if you did a good job, case closed. But looks like they did their job. They announced the conflict. But if they can't tell, well, he didn't participate, but he didn't say anything. Well, that's a problem. You didn't follow the law. You have to announce the nature of the conflict.
So once it's announced, if there's a question, is this an actual or potential, who decides that? The council? The council hears what the announcement is. I'm not sure if this is an actual or potential. Does the council then, in a sense, deliberate and decide as a council, yeah, that's just a potential, so let's go on, or no, we think that's an actual one. So that means you have to abstain from all discussion, interaction, and in fact, we'd like you to go out and sit in the audience.
Great. That's a great question, Mayor. You decided, the individual, because if it's a violation, it's on you.
Okay, that's good to know.
And so a resource, if you have a question, staff, me, or you have the ability to call the Oregon Government Ethics Commission.
But if it happens in the middle of a meeting,
Right.
so in other words, if a meeting's coming up and there's an item in there that you think, I might have a conflict here, you're better off checking with staff or the Oregon Ethics Commission prior to that meeting. So you come in knowing, I've already checked this out and here's where it is. rather than
Absolutely.
coming in and announcing it during the meeting and then saying, so what do you all think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're saying the what do you all think has to come back to me, I have to decide.
Yeah, if there's a problem, you're the one paying the fine.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
But you can't just say, I have an actual conflict, if it's only a potential conflict, and then not vote. I
Well,
mean, to get out of voting on something,
Yeah, because our charter states that counselors
must vote.
must vote unless there is an actual or potential conflict of interest.
No, an actual conflict. Potential, you still get to vote.
so I think those are your council rules, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so can you be wrong whether you have a conflict? I mean, it's not always black and white. So I think you as an
Yeah, but what
individual,
if somebody is doing it on purpose to avoid voting?
Yep.
well, then
We've had that happen.
then you have a problem and we need to talk to that person about and inform them of their obligations and their duties. But it really is an individual ethics issue.
Okay.
I think you could, if we know it's coming, we could reach out to the Ethics Commission and get an opinion from the staff. They reach out to me and I could provide an opinion and confront the counselor with that information. But I think at the end of the day, it really is, it's a personal decision based upon their own circumstances, because it's a personal fine if they do something wrong.
Yeah, this says if, unless, you're correct, unless confronted with an actual conflict of interest, every member present shall vote. And this also states in our governing rules that they must refrain from participation and the vote, and shall remove themselves from the council table.
So the scope of the potential conflict is broad, but the harm is pretty small. So if you have a potential conflict, or even if you think you have a potential conflict, what's the harm in stating that for the record? Because you can still participate. You've just made the record, well, I might have a potential conflict here, I might make some money, I don't know. This is the issue I'm struggling with, so I just want to put that out there. I want to tell you all, I want to put that on the record, but I'm still going to deliberate, I'm still going to vote.
We had a counselor one time who stated during a meeting that he thought he had a conflict of interest with such and such, and he stated what it was. And the council, we said, we think that's a potential, but that's not an actual one. He said, no, I disagree, that's an actual one. And we were saying no to all of us, and Roberta said, and Michelle, you were here, no, that's not an actual conflict, you have to deliberate. No, that's an actual one. No, so here we're having a debate whether it's actual. So it would have done much better for that person on Friday, they got their packet, to have called on Monday and said, hey, I need some help on this one. So I guess that's a good word going forward.
Yeah, we had one that was pretty tricky in trying to get a quorum together over a stipend issue. And that was hard because there were more people affected by the stipend. And I had to get Ross's opinion on how do we do this, because the stipend made it so we didn't have a quorum. And so, yeah, it can get tricky.
So better to bring it up before the meeting that night at 6 or 7 o'clock
Yes.
and try to get some direction on it.
Now I really am out of material.
Questions? Shelley has a question.
It's actually not a question. I just wanted to say thank you so much for both the information, but also how it was presented.
Oh,
The visuals are actually well formatted for low vision individuals, and so I really appreciated that.
very good. Thank you very much, that's nice to hear. I know PowerPoints have gotten flashy these days, but I'm an old school, black on white.
That's fantastic for low
Excellent.
vision individuals, so keep doing what you're doing.
Excellent, I appreciate that. Thank you very much for that feedback.
Any other questions? So, this is a conversation we've had in the past, that we as individual counselors don't pick up our phone and call our attorney for advice. If we have, and that includes me, unless the question has to do with our relationship with our city manager, and we need some direction, and in that case, I would then, the mayor, would contact directly the attorney. But in other situations, we need to bring that to Michelle and say, hey, Michelle, I need help with this one, I'm not sure about this question. Can you answer it, can Robert answer it, or do we need to get a direction from our attorney? And then Michelle either places that phone call or can say to you, feel free to make that phone call. So does that make sense? Okay. That's accurate, Michelle? Okay.
And I will often ask if you call me directly, do you have the authority to call me? So I know I cost money, and you individually don't have the authority to cost the city money. So I'll look after you.
Thank you very much. Yay!
Thank you so much.
Good to see you again. Okay, so we're gonna keep moving right along. Governing rules revisions. You've all got that? The items that were suggested to be revised are on page 3, which has to do with the process by which a counselor can bring an item to the council for initially discussion. And that's page 3, 4.1, subpoint 1, 2, and 3. Any comments about that?
4.1 plus 3 is 7.1.
You asked.
I did ask. Any input on that one there? And then page 8 had to do with counselors representing the city and the whole idea of the courtesy of notifying the city manager. Any questions, input on that? And then page 10, item 11.2, if it's in an executive session, I'll contact with other parties to the designated staff. Any questions on that one? And those are the only amendments we had, all right? So then I would recommend that we move this forward to the February 14th council meeting for adoption. Are we good with that? Okay, so let's do that. And then, the next item has to do with city manager's weekly update. I'm the one who put this on here. And here was why. A number of years ago, Michelle and I had a conversation about how do we communicate to our community. And what came out of that was the Friday email that Michelle mails out to the whole community. Anybody who wants to be on the list gets the email. Michelle reports to us once a month at a work session, at a council meeting. She has the opportunity to report to us a second time a month during the work session. My perception is Michelle has that big picture. She sees all the things in the city, and she manages all these staff. But I don't ever want to micromanage Michelle, or whoever a city manager is, to where I have to know all the details. I don't particularly want to be paying Michelle a salary to be doing lots of detail work for me when I really want her to be managing the big picture. I want to know the information. But I don't want to be asking her to spend all this time doing something that, is just nitty-gritty detail work that is more than I really need and can get into micromanaging. That's just my opinion. So I wanted to bring the question up, is this something, I think it's on Mondays you send it out to the council, and it's kind of summary of the previous weeks. Does Michelle have a need to continue doing these things? Do you have a need to provide that level of reporting to us?
It doesn't matter to me one way or the other.
Okay.
If it's useful, then I'll do it, but if it's just another email from Michelle, then I don't need to do it.
How much time does that normally require from you?
Anywhere from a half hour to an hour.
Okay? Do you, as a council, need that additional layer of reporting from Michelle?
Some of it's helpful. I mean, I don't know if a condensed version, I didn't realize how long it took you to do that. I mean, an hour can be quite a bit of time. Highlights are nice, I think.
Alonzo?
I found it very useful in order to do your review, because without it, especially when I first started, I really didn't have a clue as to what you did. And I found it very useful, but the quarterly reports and those emails, very useful. But I think at one time, when we started, I believe, it was just what you did. And then it kind of evolved to what other people were doing. And that's fine, but you don't have to do that, go that far. And then I think one time at a work session or something, we discussed, well, maybe you don't have to do it every week. But you said, okay, no, I want to do it every week, and so forth.
I'm gonna do it, I wanna do it on.
Yeah, and that's, if you did it once a month or once every 2 weeks, that would be fine too. But, if you wanted to tone it down, that would be fine, but the information is very useful, very useful. As I went and printed them all out and the quarterly reports and get a pretty good picture in order to do a good review, performance, so, yes, I found them useful, but you could certainly tone it down if it's getting to be too much.
Now, the thing I hadn't factored into it that you brought up was you're getting information from all the staff too. So then we're not only requiring your time to compile it and draft it, you're requiring all your staff to do some kind of reporting. Is that an additional layer of supporting, or do they normally provide you that support, that communication, and then you're just taking what they normally give you anyway?
I'm taking what I would normally give.
So that's not an additional job that they're having to do for us?
No.
Okay.
Does anybody else want to chime in? Can we tell?
I was thinking maybe if you just did it the first Monday of the month before the regular, a week before the regular council meeting, when we get your monthly report, that would give us an opportunity to add anything to the agenda that we wanted to know more about. But if you're in the habit of doing it weekly, like Councilor Inman said, that's fine.
Yeah, however you want to do it is fine with me too. And however deep you want to go into it is fine. An overview or more details, whatever you think is most helpful to us for your communication. 'Cause you don't have a lot of communication with us during the meetings to update us on certain things.
Well, I would say Michelle has as much time as she needs to take during meetings to communicate with us. We don't put any time restriction on her report at the council meeting, nor even in this setting. If Michelle has a report to bring to us or something that she needs to know, we don't put restrictions on that. So Kevin, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I would say that I really do find value in the reports. And it's kind of the difference of who the audience is. I think there's probably things that show up, I think we talked about this a little bit, that things that would not necessarily be for public consumption of sorts, but makes me feel like I have at least an idea of what's going on behind the scenes and stuff like that. I feel more educated when I'm talking to folks, and I just feel, my neighbor down the street, she is always saying, "You've got your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the city." I'm like, well, not as much as you might think, but definitely more so with what you give me. I feel like I am a more empowered with the information, not necessarily to share the information, but to know what's going on. And it's not a micromanagement thing at all, in my mind. It's not like I would be saying, well, what about this thing? You said that or whatever. Very rarely would it be that kind of thing. It would just be more the flow of information coming our way. So I would like to keep them. The only thing I would be willing to change might be the frequency of the information, if you wanted to do it every other week or something. But
Kelly?
I was just gonna add, I also find it very helpful, I think similar thoughts with just kind of knowing what the audience is for me, when I read that, I'm able to get a lot more insight as to what's happening with you, and the staff that you're working with, and so that gives me also better insight as to how I might be able to best support you and the staff that you're working with as well, to know this person suffered a loss, or this person is out for, and that, like, again, what are the reciprocal, or I guess, outlet, like the impacts, because if we have staff members that are out, then that has impacts on others, or whatever that is, and so this is really helpful for me to know that information as well, and again, not that I'm sharing that information with anyone, but helps me best support you, and really be thoughtful of what you need or what your staff might be aided with.
So, I printed off the one that we got today. And I think the one thing that I would like different would be for when you report on what you're doing, rather than bullet points, would be for you to write yours as well in a paragraph form that might only highlight one or two things. The high points or the low points. My wife and I used to use that as a strategy for communication at the end of long days when she was working and I was working and we were connecting, but we didn't have all day. And we'd say, what was your high point and your low point? And immediately she could get to the yay thing, this was great today. And she could also get to the and so then I could identify with that, connect with that, empathize, but also, so I would prefer not bullet points for your reporting, but rather just a paragraph or a few sentences in which you say, this happened, this happened. Because I don't feel like I need to know that you signed the checks for community sharing, or that you did the weekly email. I know you do all those things. I know you're doing jillions of stuff. What I want to know is a tidbit that you think is important, that you want to communicate to me. So that would just be my input. It sounds to me like what we're saying is there is some value. They've been helpful. I would suggest to the council that we not tell Michelle this is a job requirement, but this has some value to us, and this council is requesting that you continue. Knowing that it could change in 6 months or a year, or a new council. But that Michelle not feel like I have to do this, but rather that she recognizes this council says this has some value to me, this is helpful to me. And so I'm going to continue to do these because of that. Does that make sense? Just kind of a thought. I mean, there's some things we say to her, this is your job, you do this. There's other things we say, this is helpful to us. And if Michelle misses a week, it sounds to me like we're also saying, if you miss a week here or two because you had something going on or you were out of town, you don't have to feel like, oh, it's Monday night at 10 o'clock and I got to crank this thing out. It's okay if we don't get it, and when we get it, it's good and helpful. But I want to make sure I'm reflecting fairly what you're thinking as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always felt that the ball is in your court as far as that information goes. I don't think we've ever put any pressure on, this is something you have to do. I hope we haven't. I hope that's not been the message, but that's said, I think it's changed since when we started. And you've added to it, which is great. But I don't think we said, feel free to share with that information with us as you see fit.
Okay.
I'm going to do a quick add-on, if it's all right. You had mentioned those repetitive things that are kind of part of the day-to-day that are not really necessary. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that, because we'll see them every week and go, well, that's the part of the usual things. The only thing that I might say about that is that now and then, somehow, it is kind of nice to have a reminder that these, you know, on top of everything else, these are all the other things. So I'm not saying that you have to do anything different, that we need to change anything and include that once a year or whatever. I'm just saying that if you don't put those in there, let's us be mindful and not forget that that's what's going on, because it's certainly a big thing.
New people like me, that is not old news. That is not as usual. To me, it's something new.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, and I would like to reiterate that too, but my first year around, when that first started, that was an eye-opener for me as to what Michelle actually does around here, yeah. Big time.
Okay, is that good?
Yep.
Okay, last item, I believe, has to do with the consent calendar. So, Michelle or Roberta, take it.
It's pretty self-explanatory. When the packet comes out, if you see an error, would you please just let me know?
On like Friday or Monday, or even leave a voicemail.
Sure.
Okay, so you can even call over the weekend. Okay. And then at the meeting, the only time we would actually be pulling it, so we always say, it's written in here, unless a council wishes to pull an item. So then the question is, why would we pull an item? Because we're looking at agendas.
Right.
And we've already let you know, oh, we didn't think this or that.
A lot of times in some cities, there's more things than just minutes in there.
Okay,
And so if you'd see something wrong with that and nobody caught it till you got to the meeting, then you want to pull it out of there and you only want to approve the consent calendar as it is and then have a discussion as to what's wrong on the other
so
document.
this would be something that we didn't catch, reading it on our own,
Right.
but then we come to the meeting, how could we catch it then? If I've already read it at home, we've already read it, you've called in something, you called in something, we get back together, we have the amended one in front of us.
Mhm.
Is there any other reason to pull an item other than for that reason to correct or amend?
You could pull an item just to say, hey, you know, I noticed in the minutes such and such happened, I just want to say that, or that we talked about such and such, and I just want to say that I followed through on that, and it was great, or, you know, I really appreciate, you know, it was Groundhog Day, and I saw the groundhog, and you know, I'm looking forward to more winter or something. You can actually add your own.
But you can't change, you can't change what's there.
No, but they can comment on it.
Yeah, it's interesting, because we have correspondence that we can talk about correspondence. We're not taking any action particularly on correspondence, we don't approve it. We have consent calendar that we do have to approve with a single motion unless we pull something. And we've had counselors in the past who wanted to pull something because in the end they didn't like how the vote went. And now they want to rehash it again. We've had to say, no, you don't get to create a new business item on that. So.
It sounds like it's pretty rare that anybody would actually pull something from the consent calendar if we do what Roberta's saying.
It's usually pretty regular, you know, what's in the consent calendar.
So I guess what we're hearing is, if you find something in your reading over the weekend, let Roberta know either live or leave her voicemail. And then if it needs to be amended, we'll have an amended copy sitting
Right,
before
that
us.
way it's all done and ready for the mayor's signature at the meeting.
All right? If we have any more confusion, we'll talk about it as we go. So, that covers everything, right? We made it. We are adjourned. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Don't forget, it's still live on the CD, are we?
Yes.